Yo, 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 what's up, family? Checking in with your logic students. Hey, listen, Shay in the 930 class had reminded me that I skipped lecture 2 and I went from lecture 1 to lecture 3. So Shay, I appreciate that. So I'm jumping right in here to lecture 3. Lecture 2. I should have went in order, but the square opposition kind of fit in what we were doing. It's just a kind of an easier transition. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into what really should have been lecture 2, because as your homeworks and work is outlined, it's the second piece of homework, and then obviously it leads to the last homework and quiz stuff next week. We're gonna get moving, right? I have to warn you, like, I'm about to confuse you a little bit, but you know I'm gonna be repetitive and be repetitive. This may go a little bit longer than 30 minutes. It'll be 2 of these. So it'll be a part A, part B. This may go a little bit longer than 30 minutes, maybe 35, 40 minutes. We'll see, I don't know. But we have to set things up, clear some differences in terminology, and then go into the assignment, okay? Well, I hope you're feeling okay. It's Thursday, right? We're still on lockdown in Ohio, or wherever you're watching me at. You're probably on lockdown yourself. Shameless plug tonight, 6:30. Go on my Facebook page, Julius Dion Bailey, and I'll be doing a virtual book talk on my new book, Racism, Hypocrisy, and Bad Faith. So it's the same as plug. Go in there, check it out. Some of you in the night class, right? I think in the night class, I think you've read 2 of the chapters in there. So you might want to come check it out. All right. Obviously, some of you are actually reading the book for some assignment. So yeah, so check it out tonight. It'll be 3 nights, right? Anyway, let's focus in on what we're doing. All right. So in your homework 2, it's going to ask you to look at an argument and identify certain elements of the argument, and then obviously discuss, actually is first going to just ask you to put it in what we call proper order, and then once you put it in proper order, then it's going to ask you later on to actually solve for validity, right? So right now we're going to just kind of learn the elements of a syllogistic, of a categorical syllogism, and then we're going to sort of get into how to put it in proper order, if it's not already in proper order, and then we'll learn moods and figures and things like that in this one. Then in the next one, we'll go ahead and learn the rules and solve for validity. All right? So, hope you grab your homework papers, your reading papers. We're on the section on categorical syllogisms, right? All right, so let's kind of go back to week 1, right? Let's go back to August, right? And remember January. So remember when we were talking about pretty much a proposition, right, is a claim that must be proven true or false, right? And then we, basically looked at a proposition as having the constitutive elements of premises, of a subject and a predicate, right? And then we said these propositions, they come together to create an argument, right? Where we said an argument is a series of propositions in which one claim is made and the other propositions provide justification for that claim, right? Remember, we also talked about how to distinguish premises from conclusions, right? What is the claim? What is the issue? That's a conclusion. What are the reasons or justifications that I want to put forth to prove or to satisfy my claim? Those are premises, right? Then we went on to talk about what were premise indicators, right? Conclusion indicators. I'm getting there because it's going to be important as you read, as you do your homework and think about, as you're reading an argument, you have to be able to find the premises and find the conclusion. So that's why I'm kind of reminding you where we got to go back to come forward, right? So you remember words like since and because, and given that, and to the extent that, things like that, right? Those are premise indicators, right? So when we hear those words, we know that what follows is some type of justification, right? Then we know words like thus and therefore and then and consequently or whatever, right? And we call those conclusion indicators, right? And so we need to know that, because when we're thinking about a categorical syllogism, it's all about form, right? It's all about the form of the syllogism, right? Where are the two premises and where is the conclusion, right? The proper form of a categorical syllogism is the form that has the two premises on top and the conclusion on the bottom, right? It is fundamental that you see that in your reading and that you begin the process of remembering that your conclusion has to be on the bottom of your homework, has to be on the bottom of your rewritten argument. Why? Because we'll see here in a second. But we have to remember that. So that means that if, in fact, you have an argument that has the conclusion first, right, and then the premises that follow the conclusion, right? I'm not going to the club tonight because I ain't got no money and I ain't got no ride, right? So your claim or your point was at first, right? Then you came back and gave the justifications for the claim. I ain't got no money, I ain't got no ride, right? But in syllogism, if this was a syllogism and we were trying to put it in, well, this is a syllogism, but if we were trying to put it in proper order, we would want to put the premises on top and the conclusion on the bottom, right? So just think that, keep that in mind. So far we've said in terms of variables, right? We've used the term S as the subject of our proposition and P as the predicate of our proposition. That's not going to change, right? S is still the subject of our proposition and P is still the predicate of our proposition. But, I hate to say but I'm telling you, it's about to get real, y'all. So turn all the music off around you, focus in, tell your little brothers, your little sisters, back up. You don't know me like that. I got work to do, right? Listen, I'm about to throw some more letters on you. Just one more letter, but I'm gonna keep S and P, but it's gonna mean a little bit different. So let's go to the board, all right? I've already started, right? So we know that an S is the subject of our proposition. We know that a P is a predicate of our proposition. So in an A proposition, all S is P. In an E proposition, no S is P. In an I proposition, some S is P. In an O proposition, some S is not P. We got that, right? We remember that from our lecture yesterday. We got that now. We understand that. S is the subject, P is the predicate. Cool. But in categorical syllogisms, they kind of serve a dual role, if you will. And then we add another term in there, another letter in there called M. Here we go. So, SPM. Now, again, it's working at the same time. This was kind of tricky, right? Because I'm about to switch up or become a little bit ambiguous. I'm about to switch up on you because S and P still gonna mean the same thing, but now it's gonna mean something else, right? So you gotta focus in here, right? So, S still the subject of the proposition, P is still a predicate of the proposition. But watch this now. Now, when I start doing categorical syllogisms, S is going to stand for the minor term. P is going to stand for the major term. M is going to stand for the middle term. Again, S, P, and M. S now is going to stand for the minor term. P is going to stand for the major term. And M is going to stand for the middle term. Well, what do you mean by these terms? Remember, in a syllogism, right, you're going to have, let's just put this up here. All S is P. All S is P, right? Let's just go ahead and put this real quick, right? All S is P, right? So let's say, for instance, this was an argument, right? And basically, we would change these a little bit. This is why we got P's and M's and stuff like that. But what I'm saying here is that if this is your conclusion, right? Now you have to change it around a little bit to know what we're talking about. So watch what I'm about to do, y'all, and we'll come back and do it. So let's say, for instance, we are going to say this. Now, see what I just did? I had all S is P, all S is M, all S is P. Now I just threw in some M's in there. You're thinking, what did Bailey just do? Well, remember, this is just symbolism of the argument, right? So, this now M term is still what? In the subject position of the proposition, right? All S is P, all the subject is in the predicate. But it's a different term now, right? The P is still the predicate, but now it's a different term now. It's called the major term. Now the M is still in the subject position, the P is in the predicate position, right? Predicate position of the statement. Remember the distinction? Is in the position, right? But it stands for something different, right? So the M now is in the subject position. The M is called the middle term. The P is in the predicate position. The P is called the major term. The S is in the second proposition, which is in the subject position. The M now is in the second premise. The M is our middle term. That's in the predicate position, right? In about 20 minutes, we're going to talk about figures and stuff like that, but just hold tight. So, how do we get here? Well, this is how we have to start. The reason I told you have to remember your premises and conclusions, because you want to have your conclusion on the bottom, right? Why? Because this is what you have to have happen. You have to realize, the first step, now I'm going to do steps, right? Step 1, find the conclusion. Right? Step 2, locate major, minor term. Right? Somebody told me last night, I ain't gonna blast her. Somebody told me that they hate my board writing because it's horrible. And I told her, just listen to me, don't read the board. She said, it don't make no sense. Why you write on the board? We want to listen to you. And we argued about 20 minutes, but she was right. I have horrible writing. And I went to Catholic school. That's what's kind of crazy about it, right? But anyway, so look, find the conclusion. Bam. Underneath the line, you got a conclusion. Now, find the major and minor term. Here's the rule, guys. The major term is the predicate of conclusion. The minor term is subject of conclusion. The middle term is term found in both premises. Right? This is our rule. So your major term, which is your P, is going to be the predicate of the conclusion. Bam. Major term. Not be MT, because MT, y'all know, stands for modus tollens, so I didn't mean that. Right? Major term is predicate of the conclusion. Minor term is subject of the conclusion. This is what she was talking about. He said, when you're taking notes, I'm the only professor she know that right on top of the stuff that they already wrote on. She was right about that. I do that. But I don't care. Y'all should listen. Don't pay attention to this. So look. Right? SPM. Major term is predicate of the conclusion. P. Minor term is subject of the conclusion. S. Middle term is the term found in both premises. Bam, bam. You see, you don't see two S's. You don't see two P's. Or you see two M's in the premises. That's the middle term. So the middle term is the term that's found in both premises. Right? Right? I know I confuse you. Just step back, take a deep breath, come back up a little bit and move forward. So, categorical syllogism, the first thing we can do is to make sure that we put it in proper categorical syllogistic order. In order to put it in proper syllogistic order, we have to make sure that our conclusion is on the bottom, right? The reason we put our conclusion on the bottom is because therefore we're able to look up, because the bottom, as we know, when we're doing our diagramming and stuff like that, the bottom is where our conclusion is, and we're able to look up and move up and do whatever we got to do, going upwards. But for here, we start on the bottom because the conclusion is on the bottom of the syllogism, and now the other premises, right, have the term that's in the conclusion and another term. The term that's in the conclusion is obviously the S and P, subject and predicate, but every proposition has that. So there's nothing new about that. But what is new now in the categorical syllogism is that the S and P in the categorical syllogism stands for something else. The S is the minor term, the P is the major term. Then when we go up to the premises, the premise, the term that's found in both premises is called the middle term. S, P, M. Right? Now, I know y'all brilliant students, so I'm going to throw some on you real quick before I erase the board and do it again. I'm not going to erase the board before I go again. So we got major term, minor term, middle term. We got, this is my conclusion. The next terminology I want to give you is major premise, minor premise. Now the beauty of this is the major premise is just the premise that has the major term. The minor premise is just the premise that has the minor term. But these premises obviously are on top of the conclusion, and that's the only trick to this whole thing. When you put it in proper order, you have to put it in major premise, minor premise, conclusion order. Which is why, when I made that switch on you earlier, why I put the P here, the S here, because the major premise is the premise with the major term, P. The minor premise is the premise with the minor term, S. Right? And then the conclusion. Right? I know. Grab a drink, press pause, take a deep breath, stretch, and come back. It's all right. It gets a little more tricky, but it's still all right. We get this basis down, we're good. S and P goes nowhere, y'all. Right? The subject and predicate of my statements is just fourth grade English. It's going nowhere. It's always going to be there. But you have to remember now that it's going to serve a dual role. S and P now, S is going to stand for the minor term. That, again, here's the trick. The minor term might be in the subject or the predicate position. Right? The P is still the predicate term, but the predicate term might be in the subject or the predicate position of the major premise. Why? Because S and P now stands, S stands for minor premise, P stands for major premise. What did I just say? If all M is P, and what proposition is that? It's an A, right? And this is A2, right? And this is A2, right? I'll tell you what this means here in a second. If all M is P is my major premise. Why is it my major premise? Because it is the premise that has the major term. How do I know it has the major term? Because P is the major term, and major term is the predicate of the conclusion. So if P is here, then P is the major term. But the major term, watch this, is in the predicate of the major premise. I know. Hopefully my sister Lisa ain't listening, and she probably lost already. Love you. But look, the M is my middle term. The middle term is found in the what? The subject of the major premise. Right? This is the major premise. This is the minor premise. The M is the subject of the major premise in the major, and here the M is the predicate of the minor premise. Right? It has to always go in this order: major premise, minor premise, conclusion. Then you have all this is P, subject and predicate. Now, I just told you I was going to tell you a trick. In homework 2, it asks you put in proper order and tell me the mood of the argument. What is the mood? The mood is simply the proper syllogistic order and the categorical form statement. The proper order of the categorical form statement. So in this case, it's A. So my mood would be A in this argument. Why? Because these are all A propositions. And after I put it in proper order, all I'm going to do is define the categorical proposition letter. So locate the major and minor premise, right? Locate the major, minor term, major and minor premise, right? Now after I get here, I can locate middle term, right? Middle term, right? Then here, I can now find the mood. I could have found it earlier, but it don't matter. And the mood is simply the proper ordering of the term, of the argument. All right? Let's try this one here I put on the board. Since no soldiers are cowards, and since some professors are cowards, then some professors are not soldiers. Since no soldiers are cowards, and since some professors are cowards, then some professors are not soldiers. Now, let's notice a few things about this argument. First, it is a syllogism. How do we know that? Because it has two premises and a conclusion. It's also a categorical syllogism. How do we know? Because it has, in this case, 3 categories. It has the categories of professors, it has the category of soldiers, and it has the category of cowards. A categorical syllogism has 3 categories. But it also is a categorical syllogism because the 3 categories appear 2 times. Right? Soldiers, 1, 2. Professors, 1, 2. Cowards, 1, 2. So, the proper categorical syllogism is an argument that has 2 premises and a conclusion, that has 3 terms, and each of the 3 terms appear 2 times. Bam, we got that. So we know we have a categorical syllogism. Now, what I did for you is I went ahead and just put the conclusion on the bottom. Then, right? Then is the conclusion indicator. So I put it on the bottom. Bam. Right? Find the conclusion. Now, locate the major and minor term. Well, the major term is the predicate of the conclusion. Soldiers is the major term. The minor term is the subject of the conclusion. Professors is the minor term. Again, I did you a little solid here, put it in the right order. So, now, the major premise has to go on top. The minor premise goes in the middle, the conclusion goes on the bottom. Major premise, minor premise, conclusion. So, my major premise has to be the premise that has the major term. That's why it's called the major premise. You win that. So soldiers is my major term. Soldiers is in my first premise. This is my major premise. Professors is my minor term. Professors is in my minor premise. Bam. I got it all right. The term that's not in my conclusion, or the term that appears twice in the premises, is cowards. Cowards is my middle term. Now, locate the major premise, minor premise, now find the mood. Well, no soldiers are cowards. Is that an A, I, or an O? Don't be shy. This is my classroom. I know who be responding. Well, the day and night is different class. I don't call nobody out. But y'all know me in daytime. Because it be early, and y'all be sitting up there, and like 2 people answer, and it's like 30 of y'all in the room. I need y'all to get loud. No, soldiers are cowards. Is that an A, E, I, or O? E, thank you. Some professors are cowards. Is that an A, E, I, or O? I, thank you. Some professors are not soldiers. Some professors are not soldiers. A, E, I, or O? I think I heard 2 answers now. It ain't but one. Some professors are not soldiers. Some S is not P. A, I, or an O? Thank you. It's an O. E, I, O. And I ain't talking about the piggy with the market or whatever. EIO is my mood. That's the mood of the argument. EIO. Now, let me show you one more thing before we move to the second example. The reason I never want you to forget S and P is still subject and predicate, because now I'm going to throw something on you that you're going to have to know in your mind, but you need to see. I'm just going to put this line here. Not that I should, but I'm just going to put it here. You have subjects and predicates still. But let's put some letters in here. So, we got S, P, S, M, P, N. Right? I'm just going to put this here for right now. Right? P, M, S, M, S, P. Right? In, mood, E, I, Notice, this is your argument. I'm a little clearer down here. Notice, your major term is the subject of your major premise. Your middle term is the predicate of your major premise. In the I. Your minor term is the subject of your minor premise. Your middle term is the predicate of your minor premise, and your subject and your predicate here. So like I said, it serves dual role, doesn't it? Subject and predicate still exists, but you have to remember what position the subject term is in, because when we get to solving proving for validity, we have to remember. Right? Because I tell you why I remember it. I'll give you a quick hint. An A proposition that distributes what? The subject, right? So, it's not an A. Let's go with E proposition. E proposition distributes what? Both, right? So here, the major term and the middle term are both distributed in the E proposition. I know I'm jumping, but I just want to see where you got to go. The I proposition distributes neither one. So in the I, neither one of these are distributed. In the O, the predicate term is distributed, right? So the predicate term soldiers has distribution within this O, right? So this is why this stuff is going to come together here in my last lecture here after I take this break. So let's wrap up, give one more example, and I'll shut this video down. So listen, we start off by trying to identify what is a categorical syllogism. A categorical syllogism is a syllogism, which then, as we know, has two premises and a conclusion. But it's a syllogism that has three categories or three classes of things. Each of those three classes of things appear two different times in the argument, right? Because it's an argument, it has propositions. Because it's a syllogism, it has two premises that serve as justification to our conclusion. Three propositions. Just like any proposition, you have a subject and a predicate. We've realized and we know that every sentence in normal English and then every proposition in logic has a subject and a predicate. And we call that S and P. But in categorical syllogisms, the S and P still stands for subject and predicate, but it also serves a dual role. The S and P gets a new friend called the M. And now the S stands for the subject of the conclusion. The P stands for the predicate of the conclusion. And the M stands for the term of the argument that is in both premises. These S, P, and M have names. The S is the minor term. The P is the major term. The M